The klaxon blared through the Argos as Wesley Ortiz clung to a support beam, watching the stars spin wildly outside the viewport. The ship's emergency protocols had engaged, but the artificial gravity fluctuated dangerously. A Keplerian trade vessel had appeared out of nowhere, its targeting systems locking onto the Argos before Wesley or his crew could react. "Hull breach in Section 4, Captain Tahira Mendez shouted over the commotion. "Ortiz, get down there and secure it before we lose atmosphere integrity." Wesley pushed off from the beam, propelling himself through the corridor toward the emergency hatch. The ship's damage control team was already dispersed throughout other critical areas. As the liaison officer between the human crew and their alien allies, he wasn't usually assigned to emergency repairs, but today was proving to be an exception. He grabbed an emergency repair kit from the wall and punched in the override code for the Section 4 hatch. As the door slid open, the pressure differential nearly sucked him through. Wesley anchored himself to a safety line and entered the damaged section. The hull breach was worse than he'd expected. A 2-meter gash ran along the starboard side where debris from the Keplerian attack had penetrated. The emergency force field was flickering, struggling to maintain the seal. Wesley worked quickly, applying a temporary polymer patch over the rupture. As he pressed the final edge of the patch into place, the ship lurched violently. The polymer seal held, but Wesley lost his grip on the safety line. He tumbled toward the jagged edge of torn metal protruding from the wall. Pain seared through his right side as the metal sliced deep into his flesh. Wesley cried out, clutching at his side as blood began to seep through his uniform. He pulled himself away from the metal and activated his comm. "Bridge, this is Ortiz. Hull breach is contained, but I've been injured. Requesting medical assistance." "Negative, Ortiz," Captain Mendez responded. "Medical bay has been hit. Dr. Laverick is attending to critical injuries there. Return to the bridge if you can move." Wesley gritted his teeth and pulled himself to his feet. The pain was intense, but he'd suffered worse during his years in the Earth Defense Force. He made his way back through the corridors, one hand pressed firmly against his wound to slow the bleeding. When he reached the bridge, the situation had stabilized somewhat. The Keplerian vessel had withdrawn after the Argos had managed to raise its defensive shields. Captain Mendez was coordinating with their Zorlian allies on the emergency response. Graxtil, the Zorlian science officer, turned as Wesley entered. His 4 eyes widened in alarm, all focusing on the blood seeping between Wesley's fingers. "Human Ortiz is severely injured," Graxtil exclaimed, his translucent skin flushing a deep blue in distress. He rushed over, his slender arms guiding Wesley to a chair. "It's just a deep cut," Wesley said through gritted teeth. "Nothing to worry about." Graxtil's upper eyes blinked rapidly in what Wesley had come to recognize as Zorlian confusion. "This is far more severe than what you classify as a cut." The depth and location suggest significant internal damage. Captain Mendez glanced over. "How bad is it, Graxtil?" The Zorlian passed a handheld scanner over Wesley's side, his expression growing grimmer. "The laceration has penetrated through 3 layers of tissue and has likely damaged internal organs. By Zorlian medical standards, this is an untreatable wound without immediate surgical intervention." Wesley attempted to laugh, but it came out as a pained grunt. "Untreatable? Come on, Graxtil. Humans get worse cuts shaving. This is no time for your human humor, Ortiz," Graxtil said, his voice vibrating with concern. "We must reach the Zorlian medical station at Proxima Roman 3 immediately." Captain Mendez nodded grimly. "Set course for Proxima Roman 3, maximum sustainable speed. Contact the station and inform them we have a medical emergency." Wesley tried to protest, but the room began to spin around him. The blood loss was more significant than he'd initially thought. "Really, it's just a deep cut." Those were the last words he managed before consciousness slipped away from him. Wesley awoke to the gentle hum of medical equipment. He blinked, trying to focus his vision in the strange blue light that bathed the room. He was lying on what appeared to be a medical bed, though its design was clearly Zorlian low to the ground and curved to accommodate their unique physiology. For a human, it was uncomfortably shallow. He tried to sit up, but a sharp pain in his side reminded him of his injury. A translucent membrane covered the wound, pulsating slightly with each breath he took. "Please remain still, human Ortiz," came a melodic voice from the doorway. A Zorlian medical officer entered, this one taller than Graxtil with a distinctive pattern of luminescent spots along her neck, a sign of her medical profession. "I am physician Nidrala. You are in the Central Medical Facility on Proxima Roman 3. How long have I been out?" Wesley asked, his voice raspy from disuse. "Approximately 27 Earth hours," Nidrala replied, approaching his bedside. Her 4 eyes scanned him methodically. "Your wound proved quite challenging for our medical team." Wesley glanced down at the membrane covering his side. "What's this?" "A regenerative matrix. It is maintaining the integrity of your damaged tissues while we determine the best course of treatment." Nidrala's voice held a note of uncertainty that Wesley found troubling. "Treatment. I thought Graxtil said it was untreatable." Nidrala's skin flushed a pale yellow embarrassment Wesley recalled from his cultural training. "By Zorlian standards, yes. Our physiology is quite different from yours. We lack the remarkable regenerative capabilities that humans possess." Before Wesley could respond, the door slid open again and Graxtil entered, followed by Captain Mendez and a Zorlian he didn't recognize, this one wearing the elaborate neck adornments of a high-ranking official. "Wesley, thank God you're awake," Mendez said, relief evident in her voice. "You gave us quite a scare." Graxtil approached the bed, his eyes fixed on the wound. "The laceration penetrated your liver and damaged several blood vessels. Had we been limited to Zorlian medical knowledge alone, you would not have survived." The unfamiliar Zorlian stepped forward. "I am Director Wenzel of the Proxima Roman 3 Medical Exchange. Your injury presents us with a unique opportunity to study human resilience and regenerative capabilities." Wesley raised an eyebrow. "Happy to be your lab rat, Director, but I'd prefer a bit more information about my condition first." Director Wenzel's upper eyes blinked rapidly. "Of course. When physician Nidrala first examined your wound, she classified it as terminal by Zorlian standards. The depth and severity would be fatal to one of our kind. However, upon consulting with the human medical database provided by your ship, we discovered that humans routinely survive such injuries with proper treatment." "Like I said, it's just a deep cut," Wesley said, attempting to lighten the mood. Nidrala's skin pulsed with confusion. "A deep cut that penetrated 3 layers of tissue, sliced through part of your liver and severed multiple blood vessels. By any reasonable medical standard, this is a severe trauma." Captain Mendez stepped closer. "The Zorlians have been extraordinary allies, Wesley. They've offered to adapt their medical techniques to better suit human physiology, but they need your consent to proceed with the treatment." Wesley looked from Mendez to the assembled Zorlians. "What exactly does this treatment involve?" Director Wenzel gestured to Nidrala, who produced a holographic display. "We have synthesized a hybrid regenerative compound based on both Zorlian cellular stabilizers and human platelet factors. The membrane currently covering your wound is the first stage of treatment, preventing further blood loss and infection." The hologram showed a detailed image of Wesley's wound, layers peeled back to reveal the damaged tissue beneath. Wesley winced at the sight. "The next phase," Nidrala continued, "would involve injecting the compound directly into the damaged tissue. It should accelerate your natural healing process while providing the structural support that Zorlian medicine excels at." "Has this been tested before?" Wesley asked, a reasonable concern given the experimental nature of the procedure. "Not on a living human," Director Wenzel admitted, "but our simulations indicate a 93% probability of success." Wesley considered this. The pain in his side was constant and severe, despite whatever analgesics they had him on, and 7% chance of failure wasn't terribly reassuring. "What happens if it doesn't work?" he asked. "Then we would be forced to transport you back to Earth for conventional human medical treatment," Nidrala said. "However, the journey would take at least 11 Earth days, during which time your condition could deteriorate." Captain Mendez placed a hand on Wesley's shoulder. It's your call, Ortiz, but for what it's worth, I've reviewed their research. The Zorlians have been studying human physiology since our alliance began 3 years ago. They're better prepared for this than you might think. Wesley took a deep breath, wincing as the movement pulled at his wound. All right, let's do it, but I want Graxtil present during the procedure. Graxtil's skin flushed a bright green, the Zorlian equivalent of a smile. I would be honored, human Ortiz. Director Wenzel nodded. We will begin preparations immediately. The procedure will take place in 6 hours, after the regenerative matrix has completed its initial phase. As the others filed out of the room, Graxtil remained behind, moving closer to Wesley's bedside. Your casual dismissal of such a severe injury continues to fascinate me, the Zorlian scientist said. Is this typical of all humans, or are you an exceptionally stoic example of your species? Wesley chuckled, then immediately regretted it as pain shot through his side. Neither, really. Humans have a weird relationship with pain and injury. We acknowledge it, but we also try not to let it define us. Calling something just a cut is a way of mentally minimizing the threat. A psychological coping mechanism, Graxtil observed. Remarkable, in Zorlian culture we have no equivalent. When injured, we acknowledge the full severity of our condition to ensure proper treatment. That's probably healthier, to be honest, Wesley admitted, but humans have a long history of downplaying injuries. Soldiers in battle, athletes in competition, there's almost a cultural value placed on pushing through pain. Graxtil's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought. Perhaps this explains how your species has survived despite your relatively fragile physical form. Your psychological resilience compensates for biological vulnerability. Are you calling humans weak? Wesley asked with a small smile. Physically, compared to many species, yes, Graxtil said matter-of-factly. Your skin tears easily, your bones break under relatively minor stress, and your vital organs have minimal protection. Yet somehow you've not only survived but thrived. Wesley found himself strangely touched by the alien's assessment. Thanks, I think. Graxtil's skin rippled in what Wesley recognized as embarrassment. I meant no offense. In fact, I find human resilience admirable. It is why I volunteered for this posting. Before they could continue their conversation, Physician Nidraller returned with a medical team. We must begin pre-procedure preparations, human Ortiz. Science Officer Graxtil, you may return in 5 hours. Graxtil nodded and departed, leaving Wesley in the hands of the Zorlian medical team. As they began attaching monitoring devices and adjusting the regenerative matrix, Wesley closed his eyes and tried to ignore the throbbing pain in his side. Just a deep cut, he told himself again, though he was beginning to wonder if he'd underestimated the severity of his injury after all. The preparation for the procedure was unlike anything Wesley had experienced in human hospitals. The Zorlians had adapted their medical bay for his treatment, but the environment remained distinctly alien. The walls pulsed with a soft blue bioluminescence that Nidraller explained helped maintain optimal healing conditions. The air was saturated with a sweet, almost menthol-like scent that served as both disinfectant and mild analgesic. Graxtil returned as promised, now dressed in what appeared to be Zorlian medical attire, a semi-transparent covering that shimmered with embedded technology. The regenerative compound has been prepared, he informed Wesley, holding up a container of luminescent blue fluid. Director Wenzel has appointed me as the scientific observer for the procedure, given my familiarity with human physiology. Wesley nodded, trying to appear more confident than he felt. Glad to have you here, Graxtil. Director Wenzel and Physician Nidralla entered, followed by 2 more Zorlian medical specialists. The director approached Wesley's bedside. Human Ortiz, we have reviewed your medical history from the Argos database and made final adjustments to the compound. Are you prepared to proceed? As ready as I'll ever be, Wesley replied. Will I be conscious during the procedure? Nidralla exchanged glances with Wenzel. We believe it would be beneficial if you remained conscious. Zorlian medicine relies heavily on patient feedback during cellular regeneration. However, we will administer a neural inhibitor to minimize discomfort. Wesley had hoped for general anesthesia but nodded his agreement. "Let's get on with it then." The medical team positioned themselves around him, their movements fluid and coordinated. Nadrala carefully removed the regenerative matrix covering his wound, revealing the raw, angry gash beneath. Wesley couldn't help but wince at the sight. The cut was indeed deep, exposing layers of tissue that he'd rather not have seen. "Beginning neural inhibition," one of the specialists announced, pressing a small device against Wesley's neck. A cool sensation spread outward from the point of contact, quickly enveloping the area around his wound. The pain receded to a dull pressure, still present but manageable. "Neural pathways are stabilized," the specialist confirmed. "Patient should experience minimal discomfort." Nadrala approached with the container of blue fluid. "The regenerative compound will be administered in 3 stages. First, a base layer to prepare the damaged tissue. Second, the primary injection to stimulate cellular regeneration. Finally, a binding agent to ensure proper tissue alignment." Wesley watched as she carefully extracted a portion of the fluid with a device that resembled a syringe but had multiple hair-thin projections at its tip. "You may feel a sensation of warmth," Nadrala warned before carefully applying the device to the edges of his wound. Warmth was an understatement. As the blue fluid entered his tissue, Wesley felt as though his side had been plunged into hot water. It wasn't painful thanks to the neural inhibitor, but the intensity of the sensation was startling. "Heart rate elevated," one of the specialists noted, "within acceptable parameters." "How does it feel, human Ortiz?" Graxtel asked, his 4 eyes fixed on the wound. "Like I'm being cooked from the inside out," Wesley replied through gritted teeth. "But I'm okay." Nadrala continued applying the compound, working methodically around the perimeter of the wound. "The sensation indicates proper absorption. Your tissues are accepting the compound." Wesley watched in fascination as the edges of his wound began to take on a bluish tint. More surprising was the visible movement. The tissue appeared to be slowly knitting itself together, accelerated far beyond normal human healing. "Proceeding to stage 2, Nadrala announced, exchanging her device for another that contained a more viscous version of the blue fluid. This time, she injected directly into the deepest part of the wound. Wesley couldn't suppress a gasp as the sensation intensified. It wasn't pain exactly, but an overwhelming pressure combined with that same burning heat. "Oxygen saturation dropping," a specialist called out. Compensating with atmospheric adjustment, the air around Wesley suddenly felt richer, easier to breathe. He took several deep breaths, trying to remain calm as the compound did its work. "The compound is targeting your damaged liver tissue now," Graxtel explained, monitoring a holographic display of Wesley's internal organs. "Remarkable. The regeneration rate is exceeding our projections by 12%. Wesley tried to focus on Graxtel's words rather than the bizarre sensations in his body. "Is that good or bad?" "Excellent, actually," Director Wenzel interjected. "Your natural healing capabilities are amplifying the effects of our compound. The damaged blood vessels have already begun to reform." The procedure continued for nearly 2 hours, with Nadrala methodically applying the compound throughout the wound. Wesley drifted in and out of full awareness, the strange sensations and his own exhaustion making it difficult to remain focused. Finally, Nadrala applied the binding agent, a clear gel that solidified almost instantly upon contact with the treated tissue. "The procedure is complete," she announced. "Vital signs are stabilizing. The regenerative process will continue for approximately 72 hours, during which time you must remain under observation." Wesley felt drained but oddly relieved. The burning sensation had subsided to a gentle warmth, and the pressure was gone entirely. "So did it work?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Graxtel approached with a scanner, passing it over Wesley's side. "Preliminary results are extremely promising. The compound has successfully integrated with your tissues, and the regeneration process is proceeding at an optimal rate." Director Wenzel studied the scan results with evident satisfaction. "Human Ortiz, what you dismissed as a deep cut has taught us more about interspecies medicine than months of laboratory research. Your recovery will be documented for future reference in treating human injuries. Wesley managed a tired smile. Happy to contribute to science, though next time I'll try to do it without slicing myself open. Nadrala applied a new, transparent dressing over the wound. You will need to rest now. The compound requires significant energy from your body to complete the healing process. As the medical team prepared to leave, Graxtel remained behind. I find it curious, the Zorlian scientist said, that despite your evident distress during the procedure, you maintained your composure. Is this also part of the human tendency to minimize injury? Wesley considered the question. Partly, but it's also about trust. I trusted you and the medical team to do your jobs well. Graxtel's skin flushed a deep blue, the Zorlian equivalent of being touched emotionally. Your trust honors us, human Ortiz. Rest now. I will return to check on your progress. As the Zorlian departed, Wesley closed his eyes, feeling the gentle warmth in his side as the alien compound continued its work. Perhaps it had been more than just a deep cut after all. The next 3 days passed in a blur of medical examinations and rest. Wesley spent most of his time in the Zorlian medical facility, alternating between sleep and conversations with Graxtel, who seemed determined to document every aspect of his recovery. By the morning of the 4th day, Wesley was sitting up in bed, examining the site of his injury. Where once there had been a deep, jagged gash, there was now only a thin blue line approximately 15 centimeters long. The skin around it appeared normal, if slightly more pink than usual. The regeneration process has exceeded all expectations, Nadrala announced as she completed her morning examination. Your liver function has fully restored, and the damaged blood vessels have completely regenerated. When can I return to duty? Wesley asked, eager to rejoin the Argos crew. Captain Mendez has requested your return as soon as medically cleared, Nadrala replied. Director Wenzel wishes to conduct one final examination, but I believe you will be discharged tomorrow. Wesley nodded, pleased with the news. The blue line, will that fade eventually? We believe so, Nadrala said. The compound will continue to be absorbed by your body over the next several weeks. However, you may retain some discoloration as a permanent reminder of the procedure. A small price to pay, Wesley said, gently touching the blue line. It felt slightly raised but caused no discomfort. The door slid open and Graxtel entered, followed by Captain Mendez. The captain smiled broadly at the sight of Wesley sitting up. Looking good, Ortiz. The Zorlians tell me you're setting records for recovery time. Just eager to get back to work, Captain, Wesley replied. Mendez turned to Graxtel and Nadrala. Would it be possible to have a moment alone with my officer? The Zorlians nodded and departed, leaving Wesley and Mendez in private. The Argos repairs are nearly complete, Mendez said, taking a seat beside Wesley's bed. We'll be ready to depart by tomorrow afternoon. Perfect timing, Wesley said. Nadrala thinks I'll be cleared for duty by then. Mendez's expression grew more serious. The Zorlians have submitted a formal request to the Earth Alliance. They want to establish a permanent human-Zorlian medical research facility here on Proxima Roman 3, based largely on what they've learned from treating your injury. Wesley raised an eyebrow. All this from one deep cut. That deep cut nearly killed you, Ortiz, Mendez said firmly. And it revealed significant gaps in Zorlian understanding of human physiology, despite our 3 years of alliance. More importantly, it demonstrated how combining our medical technologies can benefit both species. Wesley nodded slowly. I suppose my little accident might have some far-reaching consequences after all. Indeed. The Alliance is fast-tracking the proposal. They've also requested that you consider serving as a liaison officer for the new facility, at least initially. This caught Wesley by surprise. Me, I'm no doctor, Captain. No, but you're experienced in human-Zorlian relations and you're now personally familiar with their medical procedures, Mendez pointed out. Plus, the Zorlians have specifically requested you. Apparently, you've made quite an impression on Director Wenzel. Wesley considered the offer. His position aboard the Argos was satisfying, but the opportunity to be part of establishing a new chapter in human-Zorlian relations was tempting. How long would the assignment be? He asked. 6 months initially, with the option to extend or return to the Argos afterward, Mendez replied. It's your choice, Wesley. No pressure either way. Before Wesley could respond, the door opened again, and Director Wenzel entered, accompanied by Graxtel. Forgive the interruption, Wenzel said, but we have completed our analysis of human Ortiz's final scans. The results are quite extraordinary. Mendez gestured for them to continue. Wenzel activated a holographic display showing detailed images of Wesley's healed wound. The regenerated tissue shows perfect integration between the Zorlian compound and human cellular structures, Wenzel explained. More remarkably, the liver tissue has regenerated with enhanced efficiency. Your liver function is now 14% above typical human baseline. Wesley blinked in surprise. You're saying the treatment actually improved my liver? Precisely, Graxtel confirmed, his excitement evident in the rapid blinking of his upper eyes. The compound appears to have stimulated not just repair but optimization of the damaged organ. This has profound implications for future medical applications. Wenzel turned to Captain Mendez. Has human Ortiz been informed of our request? Just discussing it now, Mendez replied. Wenzel focused his 4 eyes on Wesley. Human Ortiz, your contribution to our understanding of interspecies medicine cannot be overstated. What began as an emergency treatment for what you dismissed as a deep cut has opened new pathways in medical science. We would be honored if you would consider remaining on Proxima Roman 3 to assist in establishing the joint medical facility. Wesley looked from Wenzel to Graxtel, then to Captain Mendez. He thought about the past few days, the pain, the strange sensations of the Zorlian treatment, and the remarkable recovery that followed. I'm not a medical expert, he said cautiously. Your expertise in human-Zorlian relations is what we require, Wenzel said. And your first-hand experience as a patient provides invaluable perspective, Wesley made his decision. I'll accept the assignment, Director Wenzel, on one condition. Name it, Wenzel said promptly. The research and treatments developed here must be made equally available to both humans and Zorlians. This isn't about one species gaining an advantage over the other, it's about advancing medicine for everyone. Wenzel's skin rippled with approval. That aligns perfectly with our intentions, human Ortiz. The alliance documents already specify equal sharing of all medical developments. Mendez stood, extending her hand to Wesley. Looks like the Argos will be losing its liaison officer for a while, but I can't think of a better cause. Wesley shook her hand firmly. I'll be back on the Argos eventually, Captain, but for now it seems I have a new mission. The following day, Wesley was officially discharged from the medical facility. The blue line on his side had already begun to fade slightly, though Nidrala assured him that the internal improvements to his liver function would remain permanent. As he packed the few belongings that had been brought from the Argos, Graxtel entered his room. The Earth Alliance has officially approved the establishment of the joint medical facility, the Zorlian scientist announced. Construction will begin within the week, and the first research teams from Earth will arrive within a month. Wesley nodded, pleased by the news. Seems like things are moving quickly. Indeed, Director Wenzel has appointed me as the lead Zorlian researcher for the facility, which means we will be working closely together. Graxtel's skin flushed green with pleasure. I look forward to it, Wesley said sincerely. Though I hope our next medical breakthrough doesn't require me getting injured again. Graxtel's upper eyes blinked in amusement. I share that hope, human Ortiz. Nevertheless, your injury has created a unique bond between our peoples. What you called a deep cut has cut through more than flesh, it has cut through the remaining barriers between our species. Wesley smiled at the Zorlian's unexpected poetic turn. That's a nice way of looking at it. Before you assume your new duties, Graxtel said, there is a small ceremony the Zorlian medical community wishes to perform. It is customary when a significant medical advancement occurs. What kind of ceremony? Wesley asked, slightly wary. Nothing elaborate. Director Wenzel wishes to formally recognize your contribution and officially name the new regenerative compound after you. Wesley raised an eyebrow. You're naming it after me? Shouldn't it be named after the Zorlian researchers who developed it? The compound itself was developed by our scientists, Graxtel clarified. But the specific application for human physiology, what we are now calling the Ortiz procedure, was only possible because of your injury and recovery. Wesley wasn't entirely comfortable with the recognition, but understood its significance in Zorlian culture. All right, I'll participate in the ceremony. Later that day, Wesley stood in the central chamber of the Zorlian medical facility, surrounded by the entire medical staff and the crew of the Argos. Director Wenzel led the brief but solemn ceremony, speaking in both Zorlian and English about the significance of the medical breakthrough. From what human Ortiz dismissed as a deep cut, we have developed a new understanding of interspecies medicine, Wenzel proclaimed. The Ortiz procedure represents not just a medical treatment, but a symbol of what our species can accomplish together. The director presented Wesley with a small crystal container holding a sample of the blue regenerative compound. This first sample of Ortiz-1 will be preserved in the archives of the new facility, a reminder that great advancements often come from unexpected circumstances. Wesley accepted the container, feeling both honored and slightly embarrassed by the attention. "Thank you, Director Wenzel. I'm grateful for the recognition, but the real credit belongs to the Zorlian medical team who saved my life. I look forward to seeing what we can accomplish together at the new facility." As the ceremony concluded, Captain Mendez approached Wesley. "The Argos departs in 2 hours. Sure you don't want to change your mind and come with us?" Wesley shook his head. "I think I'm where I need to be right now, Captain. Besides, it's only for 6 months." Mendez smiled knowingly. "Somehow I suspect it might be longer. You seem to have found your place here, Ortiz." Perhaps she was right, Wesley thought as he watched the Zorlian medical staff mingling with the human crew. What had begun as a frightening injury had transformed into an opportunity he never could have anticipated. Graxtel approached, holding a data pad. "I have been reviewing potential research protocols for our first official project at the new facility. Would you care to discuss them over the evening meal?" Wesley smiled at his Zorlian colleague. "Lead the way, Graxtel. We've got work to do." As they walked together through the corridors of the medical facility, Wesley gently touched the fading blue line on his side. Just a deep cut, he had called it. And yet, that deep cut had carved out a new path not just for him, but potentially for the future of human-Zorlian relations. Sometimes, Wesley reflected, the deepest wounds created the strongest bonds. 6 months later, Wesley stood at the viewing window of the newly completed human-Zorlian medical research facility, watching as another Earth vessel docked at the Proxima Roman 3 station. The facility had grown rapidly, now housing over 50 human and Zorlian researchers working on various aspects of interspecies medicine. "The third research team from Earth has arrived on schedule," Graxtel noted, joining Wesley at the window. "They are bringing additional equipment for the cellular regeneration lab." Wesley nodded. "And the Zorlian science vessel from Zorlia Prime, due tomorrow," Graxtel confirmed. "They carry samples of the enhanced Ortiz-2 compound for the clinical trials." In the 6 months since Wesley had agreed to remain on Proxima Roman 3, the original regenerative compound had been refined and improved. Ortiz-2, as it was now officially designated, showed promise not just for traumatic injuries, but for treating degenerative conditions in both humans and Zorlians. "I received a message from Captain Mendez this morning," Wesley said. "The Argos is scheduled to return to Proxima Roman 3 next month. She's asked if I've made a decision about returning to the ship." Graxtel's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of concern. "Have you?" Wesley turned from the window to face his friend. The past 6 months had been the most challenging and rewarding of his career. What had begun as a temporary assignment had evolved into something much more meaningful. "I've requested an extension," Wesley said. "Another year at the facility." The Alliance approved it this morning. Graxtel's skin flushed green with pleasure. "This is excellent news, human Ortiz. Your presence has been invaluable to the success of the facility." Wesley smiled. "I'm not ready to leave yet. We've only scratched the surface of what's possible here." They walked together through the research facility, passing laboratories where human and Zorlian scientists worked side by side. What had once seemed like insurmountable physiological differences now represented opportunities for mutual learning and advancement. Director Wenzel wishes to speak with you, Graxtel said as they approached the administrative section. The Zorlian High Council has made a decision regarding the expansion proposal. Wesley had spent weeks helping to draft the proposal, which would establish similar joint medical facilities on 3 other worlds where humans and Zorlians coexisted. The expansion would dramatically accelerate the pace of interspecies medical research. They found Director Wenzel in his office, reviewing holographic projections of molecular structures. "Ah, human Ortiz," Wenzel greeted him warmly. "I have excellent news. The High Council has approved the expansion proposal in its entirety. Construction will begin on Tau Ceti Roman 4 within the month." Wesley felt a surge of satisfaction. "That's wonderful news, Director, and the Earth Alliance?" "They ratified the agreement yesterday," Wenzel confirmed. "In fact, they have requested that you personally oversee the establishment of the Tau Ceti facility once it reaches the operational phase." This caught Wesley by surprise. I assumed I would remain here on Proxima Roman 3. "Your experience makes you uniquely qualified," Wenzel explained. "You have successfully bridged the gap between our medical philosophies and established protocols that work for both species. The Alliance believes, as do I, that your presence would ensure the new facility begins on the right path." Wesley considered the offer. "When would this transfer occur?" "Not for at least 8 months, Wenzel assured him. "The facility must be constructed first, and there are still many projects here that require your attention." Wesley nodded slowly. "I'll consider it carefully, Director." As he and Graxtel left Wenzel's office, Wesley found himself reflecting on the strange twist of fate that had brought him to this point. A single injury, a deep cut, as he had so casually called it, had altered the course of his life and potentially the future relationship between humans and Zorlians. "You seem contemplative, human Ortiz," Graxtel observed as they entered the central atrium of the facility. "Just thinking about how quickly things can change," Wesley replied. 6 months ago, I was a liaison officer on a starship. Now I'm helping establish medical facilities across multiple star systems." Graxtel's skin rippled in what Wesley had come to recognize as the Zorlian equivalent of a thoughtful nod. In Zorlian philosophy, we have a concept called thalxics, the moment that divides existence into before and after. Your injury was such a moment, not just for you but for our peoples. Wesley smiled at the alien's insight. "We have a similar concept. We call it a turning point." They paused at the center of the atrium, where a small display case held the original sample of the Ortiz 1 compound, preserved exactly as it had been presented to Wesley at the ceremony 6 months earlier. "What humans dismiss as just a deep cut may indeed change the course of history," Graxtel observed. "Perhaps there is wisdom in your species' tendency to minimize adversity," Wesley laughed. "Or maybe we're just stubborn." "That too," Graxtel agreed, his upper eyes blinking in amusement. As they continued their tour of the facility, Wesley felt a sense of purpose and belonging that he had never experienced aboard the Argos. His wound had long since healed, leaving only the faintest blue trace to mark where it had been. But the impact of that injury continued to ripple outward, creating connections and possibilities that no one could have foreseen. Sometimes, Wesley reflected, the deepest cuts left the most meaningful scars.